Hi, today I will be presenting on the neoclassical piece of work, The Oath of the Horatii by Jacques Louis David. The Oath of the Horatii was painted in 1784 by Jacques Louis David. It was on display at the Salon in Paris in 1785 and created such an interest, the gallery had to extend their hours to allow the mass amount of viewers to see their work. You can find the Oath of the Horatii at the Louvre in Paris, France today. The Oath of the Horatii was so popular because it was unlike anything people had seen at the time. We can see new techniques like chiaroscuro and one-point perspective applied to many of these neoclassical works. The space is set up like a stage with a simplified architectural background and the action taking place in a shallow space. The characters are carefully modeled and statuesque in form and stance, much like Roman architecture. The contrast between men and women. The women are curvilinear and limp, while the men are rigid, upright, and tall. They are angular in form and appear strong. A sense of purpose is presented, while the women lack this and appear as victims. It connected with the political turmoil in France and connected a historical event with modern times. So who was Jacques Louis David? Early in David's career, he was a Rococo painter. The Rococo style was the prevailing style of the time. It highlighted highly ornamental and theatrical scenes. David eventually traveled to Rome to study. He embraced the classical art traditions and rejected the principles of the Rococo style. He wanted to push the perfect form of Greek art. This was in line with the beliefs of Enlightenment philosophers who questioned the established political and religious establishments. David begins applying these principles and attaching moral value to the subject of his works. Shortly after is when David becomes a politically engaged figure and even votes for the beheading of the king during the French Revolution. As I mentioned briefly, the Age of Enlightenment involved philosophers who raised new questions and challenged the established political and religious leaders. This new way of thinking emphasized rationality. These beliefs started to be reflected in artwork that began rejecting the Rococo style that highlighted sexuality in the higher class in over-the-top ornamental and theatrical ways. Artists like David returned to the ancient Greek and Roman cultures because they were viewed as the pinnacle of civilized societies. In 1789, the French Revolution began, and the American Revolution had already taken place, based off the teaching of the French Enlightenment philosophers. The Oath of the Horatii goes back to a story from the heroic period of Roman history. The Roman and Alba cities are at war and set to duel, with the survivor being victorious and ending the war. In this scene we are shown the moment where three Horatii brothers swear on their swords held by their father to win or die for Rome. The women are in the back in sorrow, but the men seem to dismiss them entirely. This scenario is complicated by the intermarriages of the two families. A sister of the Horatii brothers was the wife-to-be of one of the Curaceous sons from Alba. So no matter who wins the battle, they still both lose. David's portrayal of the women being so passive suggests a widespread belief of the time that women were unable to think of civic responsibilities. He is also relating the sacrifice that families must endure for their country. The subject is the focus of patriotism and sacrifice. The willingness to die for their country that was presented in the painting resonated strongly with French audiences and made neoclassicism the preferred artistic style of the French Revolution. The French audience saw the painting as a revolutionary statement, but it was actually not originally intended that way. It was painted under royal patronage. After David saw the reaction, it pushed him to continue to apply the Enlightenment principles to his work and push forward the new neoclassical art style. David believed that paintings like the Oath of the Horatii would serve to install patriotism and civic virtue in the public at large. The paintings celebrated of Roman patriotism sacrifice connected with the upset French viewers who wanted the revolution to break away from the abuses of monarchy and begin a new republic. When I first saw the Oath of the Horatii, I could tell it was making a statement. The organized composition and use of lighting and perspective seemed very intentional, presented a timeless message of patriotism, sacrifice, family, and the ideal ways of life. The messages of this story and imagery can be applied to even modern day, where we can be motivated to challenge the higher establishments that we disagree with and to stand up for what we believe in and are willing to make an ultimate sacrifice for. The messages that we see in neoclassical works, especially David's Oath of the Horatii, we can see in modern protest art. One of the most famous examples of this is Shepard Fairey's work in his Obey campaign. Shepard originally made the Obey sticker almost as a joke, but after seeing the public's interpretation of the imagery of Andre the Giant accompanied with the words Obey, he was inspired to make work that challenged popular establishments and beliefs and used historical figures to inspire people to reconnect past wrongs with modern issues. I am very influenced in my own artwork and designs to embed messages that make people stop and think and be able to be open for interpretation to apply to their own lives and beliefs. I feel like this connects with the neoclassical artworks such as the Oath of the Horatii because David used the new principles he had embraced and applied them to the piece without fully intending to get such strong connections and reactions to help motivate the French Revolution. Work that inspires action and change is extremely important throughout history and should always be used as a tool and voice of the people. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation, and here are my sources. Thank you.